Today we're going to talk about bike safety, specifically what we need to do to make sure that our bike is ready to go every single time we ride it. So a lot of people, kids, adults, any of us, might just hop on our bike and start going. But there are a few things we should check every time before we get off and start riding. That way, if there's an issue, we can fix it while we're at home. So you want to check the handlebars and make sure they're straight. And we want to make sure that they're in line with the tires. So if our handlebars are straight the way they should be, that the front tire isn't cranked one way or another, the way that it should, in a way that it shouldn't be. We also want to make sure that our brakes work. So we're going to check our brakes. We want to check for air in the tires. That's a really important one. You don't want to get far away from home and realize that you need to put air in your tires and not have a way to do that. We also want to make sure that if we have a quick release tire on the front or back or both of our bike, that especially if you've taken it off recently, that it is properly realigned and that the brakes are reattached. And we want to check the chain, make sure that it's on the track the way that it needs to be. So we're gonna go through that. So I have my son Caleb with his bike, and he's gonna help us look at what we need to do a quick 30-second bike check, and then that way if there are issues we can fix them before we get riding. All right, Caleb, let's go ahead and check that bike. So the first thing we want to check is our brakes. So we want to the first way to check our brakes is to go ahead and squeeze those handlebars and watch as the brakes grip the tire. So do that on the front and then do that on the back. And he's moving his bike forward a little just to make sure it grips as he does that. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to check to make sure that when the handlebars are perpendicular to the body of the bike, that the wheel is also straight. So is it straight? Okay, we want to check the seat. Let's make sure that the seat isn't loose. You can go ahead and put your kickstand down. So we're going to check the seat to make sure that it's not loose, it's not going to wiggle or fall off. So he's got a quick release lever on his seat, so he's just checking to make sure that that is properly back so that it's not going to come undone. Okay, so what about our chain? How do we check our chain? Can we check the chain? So the best way to check your chain, he's going to flip that around so we can see it. So the best way to check your chain is to lift your back tire up and spin the wheel. Right? There you go. So he can check that, and he can see that it's moving the way that it should. Okay? And then why don't you go ahead and check for air in both your tires? Okay, we want it to be semi-firm, but we don't want it to go down very, very easily. Okay, go ahead and check the front. All right, everything looks good. So the last thing we want to check is Caleb has a quick release lever on his back tire and his front tire. So Caleb, can you spin your bike around so we can see that? All right, right there is good. Thank you. Okay, so Caleb's got this quick release lever on his front tire. Can you show us that? Okay, so you don't have to do it. So what that does is that releases his tire really quickly if he needs to load it into a bike rack or into the back of a car. It flips forward and then it unscrews a little bit and then that tire comes off. But in order to take the tire off easily, he has to disconnect the brake. So he's going to have to check the brake to make sure that it's connected properly. Okay, so he disconnected it, and he's going to go ahead and put that back together so that he knows that his brake is going to work if he needs it. And then he also just wants to check that lever, and it sits on two forks on either side of the tire. So he just wants to check those forks and make sure that they are properly on top of the bar that they sit on, and that it's nice and tight so that the bike isn't going to come off of that post. Okay, so does that one look good? Okay, the back one. All right. Perfect. It looks like his bike is ready to go, so he can go take off on a bike ride. But first, he needs to put on a helmet. So that's going to be our next discussion, is helmets. All right, so now that we've checked our bike to make sure that it's safe and roadworthy, and corrected any issues that it may have, the next thing we have to do before we can get on and ride our bike is check our helmet. So I have my little friend here, and he's going to help me demonstrate proper helmet positioning and fit. It's important to remember that when we wear a helmet, it needs to be straight across your head, 2 finger width between our forehead and the bottom of the helmet here. We want to have a V right here below the earlobe, and then no more than 1 finger width below the chin, which is exactly what he's got on his helmet here. And it actually maybe could go a little tighter. Also, if you have a ratchet strap, you want to check that every single time that you put your helmet on. So 2, V, 1. That's the best way to remember it. So it's really important to check your helmet every single time you get on your bike, because especially this little clip right here comes undone pretty easily. And I know my kids, I've taught them both to check their helmets, and that's the most common thing that we have to readjust every time. That, and then this strap here often gets a little bit looser, and the more I pull on it, the looser this gets here. So it's really easy to teach your kids how to tighten their own helmet, but then if they can't tighten their own helmet, sometimes my kids even come to me, even though I've taught them very well how to do their helmets. Okay, so 2, V, 1. Now it's also important to remember that no matter what we're riding, maybe a bike, a scooter, a motorized bike, a motorized scooter, rollerblades, maybe skiing, skateboarding. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a lot of other things, but anytime that we're not in control of our forward motion because we've put something, especially if we've strapped something to our feet or we're on something, it's really important to put a helmet on our head and make sure that it's properly aligned to our head. Okay, and another thing is that so often I see kids riding bikes and they've got a helmet, which is great, but sometimes that helmet is so loose that it gets kicked back like this. Now, if we already talked about the 2 finger width, that helmet is a lot more than 2 finger width. So it's important the helmet sits straight. We also don't want it to be cranked to the side like that. Okay, we want it to sit straight on the head. Okay, so now he's got that straight on the head, and about right there is actually about 2 finger widths, but it's not straight, sorry. All right, that's about 2 finger widths for his helmet, okay? And then we get it tight so that it stays there. Now, if the helmet is too loose, which this one actually is, like I said before, and we walk around, what's gonna happen? Our helmet's gonna wiggle, and we don't want that either. We shouldn't be able to move the helmet by wiggling our head side to side or front and back, okay? All right, so another important thing about riding a bike or getting on a scooter or whatever is making sure we have the right clothing on. So a bike especially, it's really important to not wear super loose fitting pants. So pants that are lightweight and really loose around our leg, especially on the chain side, the pants can get caught in the chain. So if you're gonna wear those when you ride your bike, you can get clips that you can put around them. You could roll them up as long as it'll stay while you're riding, because you don't want that to come undone and get caught in your chain, because that'll cause an accident. And then the last thing is, I often see kids riding around, and I love it. Right now, we're all trying to stay so active, and I see a lot of kids riding bikes, a lot more than I used to see, I think. And sometimes they wear helmets and sometimes not, but something I see more often than anything is flip-flops or just inappropriate shoes, sometimes no shoes at all. So the best kind of shoe to wear is a shoe that ties, because we don't want it to come off our foot. Slip-on shoes are okay as long as they fit tight enough to where they're not going to slip right off your foot while you're pedaling. But flip-flops are a big no-no when you're riding a bike, scootering, skateboarding, anything like that, because that flip-flop can get caught underneath as you're riding your bike and get flipped behind you and cause you to wreck, and we don't want that either. So make sure you wear your helmet and wear it properly. Make sure that you wear the right type of pants and wear the right type of shoes every single time you get out there to be active. But we want you to stay active. We also want you to be safe. So watch for us. The next series of videos is going to be about our brain and why it's so important to wear that helmet. So now we know how to fit our helmet, but I want to really really make sure that everybody knows why it's so important to wear a helmet and what can happen if we injure our brain. So we look forward to seeing you. Okay, so now we've checked our bike to make sure that it's ready to go. We've properly fit our helmets to our heads. So now we need to know some rules of the road, if you will, before we get on our bike and start riding. So some important things to remember are if you're riding on a bike path or a trail and you come across someone who's going the same direction of you, you need to pass them on whatever side is more open. If they're walking in the middle of the road, you want to pass them on the right. So you'll say on the right. If it's a wide path and they're more to the right, you can say on your left and pass them on the left. And the same if they're walking more to the left. You don't have to make them move one direction or the other. Just let them know that you're coming and what side you're coming from. If you see someone coming at you, usually because they can see you, you don't have to say much. Okay. If you're going downhill, you actually have the right of way on a bike, which is different than driving a car. But when you're on a bike, you actually have, because you're going faster, you actually have the right of way when going downhill. And then the last thing we want you to know are hand signals. So this is a fun one. I'm going to teach you the hand signals. These are very basic hand signals. You're welcome to look up other hand signals, or you can do it with your right or left hand, but the ones I'm going to show you are with your left hand. And a really fun thing to do is you can play kind of a Simon Says with your hand signals and have someone say the hand signals and maybe they do a different one and try to trick you into getting you out of the game if you know how Simon Says works. So Caleb and I are going to show you. First I'm going to demonstrate really quick. So this is my left hand. Even if it's reversed on camera, I promise this is my left hand. So if I'm going to make a left turn, I'm going to put my left hand straight out away from me. So that's saying I'm going to turn this way. I'm going to go left. If I'm going to make a right turn, I'm going to just bend my elbow to a 90 degree. So that's saying I'm going to go that way. Okay? And then if I'm going to stop, I'm just going to put my hand down like this. That's stop. Okay? So left, right, stop. Pretty simple. Again, you could do it with your right hand. It would be the opposite. It would be right, left, stop, which might be a little confusing. Most people, I believe, do it with their left hand. You want to come show? All right. So he'd be riding his bike. Maybe he wants to make a left turn, so he'll do a left turn signal. Straight out. You're good. So that's his left turn. He's letting people know that he's going to go left. And then if he wants to go right, he bends his elbow at 90 degrees. And if he wants to stop, he just puts his hand down. Okay? Why don't you face away from the camera and we'll do it again. All right. Yeah. Just trust me. So if we're riding our bike and we want to make a left-hand turn, what do we do? Yep. And then if we want to stop, what do we do? Yep. And go right, left, right, left, stop. Yep. All right. So those are some of the rules of the road. You can always look up more rules of the road. Some paths and bike trails might have different rules for different reasons, and so it's important to actually know the rules when you go out bike riding, especially if you're trail riding. Just know the rules for that particular area before you get out there. Don't forget to always give your bike a 30-second look over. Just check the brakes, check all those safety features so you don't get into trouble while you're riding your bike. And then make sure that your helmet is always properly aligned to your head. Because if we put a helmet on our head that's not properly fit to our head, it actually doesn't do us any good to be wearing that helmet. So enjoy. Everybody get out there and ride a bike, but make sure you always put your helmet on. Have a good day.